Greetings and welcome to In-Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. Now, International Women's Day is more than 24 hours. To get some insight on issues broader than the day itself, we are joined by Representative, UN Women Multi-Country Office Caribbean, Tonni Brodber. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Brodber. And let's start from the ground up in terms of getting an idea of UN Women, in terms of aims and objectives. Thanks.
Sure. UN Women is the entity for gender equality and women's empowerment. And we were created by the United Nations General Assembly we started in 2010. Our objectives are to support countries, that's governments and civil society, to ensure that there is an enabling environment for all women, men, boys, and girls to be able to thrive and attain their fullest potential. We use the lens and analysis of gender equality and gender transformation to try to ensure that that happens.
And now I want to get definitions for the distinction between equality and transformation. But while you're giving us that, I also want to ask, how easy is it to work hand in hand with different jurisdictions, sovereign entities, saying, okay, well, these are some of the things that we've seen work in regions or areas close to your region. What is that process like in terms of saying, okay, well, these are the resources that we can put at your disposal?
All right, so I'll start with the definitions, and thanks for that, because sometimes there's a lot of UN speak. Equality, we're looking at human beings being valued as equal and acknowledged for being able to fulfill their potential economically and social in the ways in which they know they can. So removing any barriers to that opportunity for them. Transformation is looking at the ways in which we can transform the systems that exist right now to ensure that we achieve equality. Something as simple as going into the bank, when I did, to get a mortgage and being asked if I had an older male family member, because I wasn't married at the time, who was willing to sign with me. And it's not that long ago that that happened. In order to transform for us to get to equality, so any woman can go into the bank and get what she needs. And I believe most banks now have as a clear policy that should never be asked of anybody, is transforming the ways in which we do things. And changing a policy like that is transformation so that all people can access financing. The way in which we work with sovereign bodies, the United Nations works within let's say a normative framework, standards that are created by sovereign bodies, by our General Assembly. When we have conventions, like the convention that UN Women supports, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, it is created and written by sovereign bodies, and it is ratified by sovereign bodies like Trinidad and Tobago. So what we are really doing is working hand in hand with the government to say, well, this is the standard you have set for yourself. How can we support you in achieving that? And the way that the UN works, it's not only UN Women, but across the UN agencies, is we go beyond the resources. We're not banks. We're not the World Bank. We're not the IMF. But what we have is the experience and the opportunities that other countries have either achieved or gone through that can be adapted to the space. And we have also the skill of networking in terms of bridging for society and the governments to say, well, civil society is thinking it should go this way. Government is saying this is what we can do. How can we create a space where conversations are had that are not fractious, that understand we have the same goals in mind so that we can work collaboratively to achieve those goals?
And in terms of achieving those goals, what are some of those initiatives, past, present, locally, regionally, that really stand out and you say, yes, this is a signpost of the way that we want to go, the way that we want to work towards that equality and transformation?
Right. And the thing with equality is you can define it in so many ways. And we're lucky to have the Sustainable Development Goals, which Trinidad and Tobago has also aligned itself to, as well as all of the Caribbean countries. And there are 17 goals. Goal 5 is equality, gender equality. And under that goal, we have some very clear indicators of what success will look like when you achieve gender equality. One is a reduction in the prevalence of violence against women and girls. So I'll start there and then I'll get to some of the others. In Trinidad and Tobago, based on research that has been done on the prevalence, not just the administrative data in terms of people who go to the police or people who go to the healthcare system, but those who don't report, we do surveys to find out what is the actual prevalence of violence. And at this stage, it is 44% of women who have ever been in a relationship have experienced some form of violence in their relationship. Success is ensuring that the services provided to women and men, because the services are supposed to be services that reach people where they are, who are experiencing violence in their relationship, are strengthened. Success is saying that the legislation is strengthened, that there's increased investment in ending violence against women and girls, and that there's also a change in behaviors and attitudes amongst women and men around acceptance of violence against women and girls. And through the Spotlight Initiative, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has achieved significant successes, including launching a national strategic action plan on the 4th of March to end violence against women and girls, stating very clearly exactly what needs to continue to be done to strengthen the police services, which were also strengthened during the Spotlight Initiative, training for many police officers that becomes embedded into the police service. So not one-off trainings, but something that is part of the way in which you work and part of the way in which you train. Another area with regards to achieving gender equality, in which Trinidad and Tobago has really, I think, achieved much success, is around economic empowerment. How can we ensure that women have equal access to financing? That example I gave earlier, so that no one is creating a barrier of you need to have an older man or a man to come and sign with you. If your documents are in order, you yourself can get financing. Also ensuring that the legislation is in place so that if you are experiencing any kind of harassment, violence that is making you not able to do the job that you were hired to do, you can also seek support, seek some kind of justice in that realm in terms of an enabling environment then, because you know that this is not something that you just have to put up with, that you can also, as Singing Sandra was saying, die with dignity, because the state is also enforcing that. So we have had a lot of successes, whether it is at the policy level or it is also at the systemic level in terms of institutions changing the ways in which they do business or strengthening the ways in which they respond to gender inequality, whether it manifests as violence against women and girls or it manifests in barriers that don't need to be there when people are trying to access financing.
And with that, we take a short break, and there's many things that I'd like for us to come back to. I'm very glad we're having this conversation with Ms. Tonni Brodber, representative, UN Women Multi-Country Office in the Caribbean. Stay with us. We'll return with more. Welcome back. We are speaking with Tonni Brodber, representative, UN Women Multi-Country Office, Caribbean. And just before we took the break, you cited Singing Sandra, dying with dignity. So let me bowl you a full toss so you could just knock it out of the park. In terms of having women live with dignity, why is it important to invest specifically in women? And even though you've already started to answer, does that investment need to be totally financial?
Those are plenty of questions. All right. So why do we invest in women? I think I want to start off by saying a lot of the times when we talk about investing in women, there's a perception that we mean stop the investment that we're doing in every other group, like men as well. No, we're saying that there needs to be an increased investment in women, yes, and in issues related to gender equality. There needs to be this investment because, at least in the Caribbean, we have a lot of households that are led by women. Globally, we know that when you invest in when women have higher levels of education, it bodes well for their families, for their children. When you invest in women, you're investing in half of your population. The reason we're saying invest in women is because we have not had enough of an investment in women. And I know a lot of people say, but what you mean? We've been talking about this gender equality and women's empowerment. Women are empowered. You have women prime ministers, women have all the jobs. We have to not just look at anecdotal data, and we have to actually look at evidence. And when you look at what the data that we have available tells us, is that although women are graduating from UWI at higher rates than men, and not just UWI, all forms of tertiary education in the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago, it is not translating into increased employment. So that is a return on investment that the country is not benefiting from because women are either under or unemployed. So that is something that we need to really address if we want to have sustainable development in our spaces that looks like people really getting a return on the investment that is made in their education. The other area in which we really need to look at investing in women, I like to go to that movie Hidden Figures. When you, for whatever reason, whether the bias is an obvious bias or it's a subconscious bias, when you count a whole group of people out, you are not reaping the rewards that you can from their expertise and from their talent. So invest in women, invest in men in the ways in which we need to see in order for our society to really thrive. We have a situation right now where we're not seeing enough women in science, technology, engineering, and math. And also the arts. We see a lot of women in arts. They're saying STEAM now instead of STEM because we need them all. But something as simple as, and I say it all the time when I go through Trinidad and Tobago Airport, and I said it yesterday when I came back to Barbados from Antigua and Barbuda, the people who make these machines that beep when we walk through them, if a woman was on the team, we would have probably not had machines that beep every time someone who walks through with a bra walks through it, because you would have the diversity of perspective to ensure that the science applied acknowledges the way in which all human beings walk through this world, and all human beings who travel walk through this world. In one time, it was my hair during the other machines, and you could see the hair they were looking for was straight hair. But if you had an afro or if you had locks, they had to touch it, and they shifted it because enough of people complained to say, who was on the team in the research and development that made this security machine that saw a human being as only one thing? That is why you need to invest in women, because human beings are women and men, and we represent ourselves in the world in many ways. And if we want to benefit from it, and if we want to have us being able to truly live our potential within this space, invest equally in women and men. And the last thing I want to talk about, because it's such a big thing and we don't have enough time, but we keep talking about low birth rates in the Caribbean. And we keep talking about easy, in quotation marks, solution. When we look at reproduction, you must invest in women, because investing in women would also mean investing in your society. It would mean that your social protection measures include early childhood education investment. Because if you want people to have more children, they need to know that the children will be taken care of. People don't just want to have children and not be able to fully invest in their children. But that work should not only be the work of an individual woman or just a woman and man. The state also getting involved through gender responsive social protection, like early childhood education, for one example, is a way in which we invest in women and it reaps its rewards across society. because we have research that shows that children who are involved in early childhood education are much less likely to get engaged in criminality. So it's not just investing in an individual woman. It's investing in the ways in which we need to understand how women engage with our world and our country.
And like I said, it was a full toss fair to hit out of the park. If it was schoolboy cricket, they might have said 6 and out. We're not out of time yet, but I realize that apart from just looking at the importance of corporate planning, development of gender action plans to ensure that higher level of equality and transformation, keeping putting in that transformation in the workplace and the society as a whole, I also want us to get to the day itself. So International Women's Day, the theme, how the theme is determined, the please and thanks.
Fantastic. So International Women's Day, I want to give a little history about it because it's such a great history. The reason we have International Women's Day is because women were blocked from an anti-slavery conversation. They were blocked from speaking. And they decided they were going to protest, that they needed civil, social, political, economic rights. And that conversation continued until 1977 when the UN said, we need a day where we highlight women's contribution to the world. And it's not because men don't deserve a day too. My son asked me about that the other day. But it's because we have not been really focused for a very long time on the contribution of women. It's been invisible. So this year, it is invest in women and accelerate, right, for impact. I've been speaking a lot about the investment from the public sector perspective, but the private sector has an incredible and important role to play as well. We need to see spaces in which financially women are able to go to work and know that if they decide to have children, their husbands who work in their same organizations or their partners can also get paternity leave. They get the maternity leave they need, they have paternity leave, so parental leave, because raising children is not a one-person job. We also need companies that understand and protect when people are experiencing different levels of abuse in the workplace that are sexually motivated. We talked about singing Sandra. This was the norm for so long, and there wasn't legislation to address it. There weren't policies in organizations where people demonstrated we're serious about this. We are serious. This is a zero-tolerance space. We are about rehabilitation, but we are also about accountability. And so private sector organizations investing clearly in creating a workspace where women and men can thrive. That is something that we have seen more and more over the years in Trinidad and Tobago and across the Caribbean. UN Women has women's empowerment principles, which are 7, and many organizations have already signed up for these principles across the Caribbean. We have the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange today ringing the bell for gender equality because they too understand why it is important to ensure women-owned businesses are listed on the stock exchange and understand how they can get increased equity by going public. There's so many levels to this. You have the public, you have the private, you have the individual, and you have the institutional. But all of it needs to be a collective effort to ensure that we increase our investment, not just financially, absolutely financially. We need $360 billion to achieve gender equality by 2030 globally. This is what the global reports say. But also we need to invest our time and we need to invest our energy in genuinely demonstrating we believe in equal value across human beings, regardless of whether they are male or female.
We want to thank you so much for the hard facts, your anecdotal experiences, as well as just the information and insight, Tonni Brodber, UN Women Multi-Country Office Caribbean Rep. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for joining us.